of looking at what's going to happen tomorrow between the Montreal Canadiens and the Washington Capitals at the Bell Center, I wanted to talk a little bit about player acquisition and lack thereof for Montreal. Not like they're not trying, but there's nothing there. And we have to stop listening to every Tom, Dick, and Harry out there who has an idea or thinks he does. Let's talk some puck. Hey gang, Kosta here from PuckTalk Montreal for this November 19th edition of the show. Thanks for tuning in. And before we get started on trying to preview what's going on with the Montreal Canadiens and the Washington Capitals, we need to talk a little bit about player acquisition and stuff that people are just throwing out there and everybody's starting to believe. Starting with a certain Tage Thompson out of Buffalo. A couple of weeks ago, everybody was talking about how Tage Thompson was ready to come to Montreal and like the Canadiens should go out and get him. Well, the Canadiens called. Buffalo told them he wasn't available. They moved on. And there were other teams that were asking as well. The Oilers, the Rangers. Everybody's trying to get better in the National Hockey League. So it would only be normal for people to ask about Tage Thompson and see if he's available because he's such a good hockey player. But then you look at some of the names that come across the waiver wire, like centerman John Beecher, who was waived by the Boston Bruins earlier this week. Everybody's saying, oh yeah, the Canadiens should go get Beecher. He's going to be a great centerman for the Canadiens. Beecher has 1 point this year. If he was so good, why are the Bruins letting him go? I got to tell you, sometimes I wonder if people actually think before they speak or they put something on the web to see whether or not it's something of value. Tage Thompson's not leaving Buffalo. Let's call it like it is. Buffalo's made it abundantly clear. Beecher, not a fit for Montreal. And here's the thing that people need to remember about waiver pickups. If you take a look at the Canadiens' recent history, who are the last two waiver pickups that the Canadiens had that were of any substance? One, very famously, is Paul Byron. They gave up, I think it was the Calgary Flames that gave up on him. Canadiens picked him up. Lo and behold, they found a niche for him because they gave him a role. The other one Sam Montembeault, who went from being the third stringer in Florida to being on the waiver wire and being picked up by the Montreal Canadiens on October 1st, 2021. Those are the two that the Canadiens have had any success with as far as waivers are concerned. Waivers are specifically a mechanism to allow teams to send players that have experience down to the American Hockey League and up again, while giving teams opportunities to pick at them if and when they become available. Now, here's the thing. When a team sends a player down from the NHL to the AHL, it's much less likely for an NHL team to pick them up as opposed to a player being called up from the AHL, having proven what he's able to do at minor hockey in the lower level and being able to bring him back to the NHL so he can help a certain team. Also, keep in mind that it's not first come, first serve when it comes to the waiver wire. There's a pecking order, and the Montreal Canadiens have to wait for their turn in the pecking order. Sometimes they may very well be willing to grab a player, but somebody else grabs them before it becomes their turn. It happens. It's not like the Canadiens aren't interested. It's just that, wait, this guy got picked up by another team because they were ahead of us on the list. Too bad, so sad. It's the way the system works. One season, the Canadiens will be higher. Another season, they'll be lower. It all depends on where they finish. So while a lot of people out there in new media, which is this forum, a podcast, they tend to like to say, oh, well, this is happening and this is happening. And, oh, we should pick up this guy. And, he's available on waivers and we should go. Stop. Okay? You do not find a second line center via the waiver wire. If you want to find a second line center, you need to trade for him. How do you trade for him? Well, that's in the magic of what Kent Hughes has been able to do with the Montreal Canadiens. And so we'll see if that happens prior to the Christmas break. And I say Christmas break because the Canadiens still don't know where they're going to be vis-a-vis the roster freeze in December. American Thanksgiving is coming up in 2 weeks. Will the Canadiens get out of this current funk and be able to get more points and stabilize themselves as far as their positioning in the Atlantic? Or are they going to continue to free fall? Nobody knows. They're playing decent hockey. Last game and the game before, they got decent goaltending, but will they be able to put W's on the board? That remains to be seen. Further to that, before we get to the roster moves, there's an email that was sent out to a bunch of different media outlets, whether it went to the Canadian staff, including Coach Marty St. Louis. It went to La Presse. It went to the Journal de Montréal. It went all over the place from somebody by the name of B.D. Young. And it was, if I call it anything but vitriol, I'd be remiss. It was probably the nuttiest email I've ever read. I mean, when you talk about somebody who is a conspiracy theorist and is blaming guys like Tony Marinaro and Eric Engels for creating propaganda to, gain favor for the Montreal Canadiens organization, apparently you've never listened to Tony and Engels speak. If there's one thing that I can tell you as clear as day, and I'm sure a lot of you listen to both of them, and you'll agree, whether you're reading Eric's stuff or whether you're listening to him on the variety of different podcasts that he does, the one thing that these two guys are is honest. They deliver a good opinion, and above all else, they know people on the inside. So they're not going to sit there and say to themselves, okay, this is what I'm going to say so that I can gain favor with the Canadiens and the Canadiens can get a little bit of relief so that I can, get a little bit of inside information. That's not what happens. If anything, Tony and Eric deliver honest opinion. It's their opinion. It's not somebody else's. The same way I give you mine, they give you theirs. So before you say that they're spewing stuff that the Canadiens are trying to spin for everybody, take a back seat. All right? There's other media outlets that are there to drive people crazy as far as bullshit is concerned. And that's not what comes from Tony Marinaro and from Eric Engels. I can promise you that. Now, time for lineups, and that means time for Instacustoms. Instacustoms.com is Canada's highest rated print shop with over 3,000 Google reviews and a 4.9 star rating. They offer direct-to-garment printing on all your favorite clothing, along with coffee and travel mugs, and they even offer embroidery. Habs won a Stanley Cup? You can win too on Stanley Street at Instacustoms.com. So this is what the Washington Capitals lineup looks like for tomorrow. You've got Alex Ovechkin, Dylan Strome, and Anthony Beauvillier, Protas, Surdiff, and Tom Wilson on the second line, Zuhaim, McMichael, and Leonard on the third, and then Milano, Lapierre, and Frank on the fourth. On defense, Fehervary and Carlson, who is still, despite the fact that he's 35 years old, he's still among the best defensemen in the National Hockey League. Jacob Chychrun and Roy, Sandin, and Trevor Van Riemsdyk. And in goal, Logan Thompson and Charlie Lindgren. Now, the lineup is missing a certain component, and I will point that out in a second. But the thing that you have to look at when it comes to the Washington Capitals is the fact that the top two lines still have quite a bit of firepower. Whether you're looking at Tom Wilson or, of course, the Great Eight or Strome, they can all put the puck in the net. The issue is that they're not the same team as they were last year. And why is that? Well, they're missing, number one, a very big piece, and that is Pierre-Luc Dubois, who's on injured reserve right now. So it's fine and dandy to think that the Washington Capitals are still, among the best teams in the National Hockey League, but right now they are not delivering. And so it's not the same team that the Canadiens faced in the playoffs, and there's a very strong possibility that the Canadiens may be able to do some damage tomorrow. But here's the thing. Ovechkin always likes to play at the Bell Center. Protas always seems to be a thorn in the Canadiens' ass, along with Tom Wilson. You remember, of course, the famous fight between Wilson and Josh Anderson in the benches last year. So, these teams don't like each other. Ryan Leonard on the third line, he's also very dangerous, as is Benoit Duhaime. So there's a lot of good firepower on the Washington Capitals. Then when you look at the Montreal Canadiens lineup, of course, they've got Cole Caulfield, Suzuki, and Zachary Bolduc on the right wing, Slafkovsky, Kapanen, and Demidov on the second, Roy, Evans, and Anderson on the third, and Davidson, Veleno, and Gallagher on the fourth line. On defense, Mike Matheson and Noah Dobson, Jaden Struble and Lane Hudson, Arbor Xhekaj and Alexander Carrier, and in goal, Sam Montembeault and Jakub Dobeš. Injury-wise for the Montreal Canadiens, of course, we know Kirby Dach out with a broken foot, 4 to 6 weeks. Alex Newhook, 4 to 6 months. Patrick Laine out until at least mid-December. And Kane Gooley, another guy who was out 4 to 6 months with an adductor tear. So it's not like either one of these teams is at full strength, right? But the Canadiens have had to deal with a little bit more adversity given the nature of the injuries and the people that it's happened to. So what's the game going to look like tomorrow? What do the Montreal Canadiens do to get the best of the Washington Capitals? Well, for that, cheapesttshirts.ca.
Cheapesttshirts.ca has men's, women's, and children's t-shirts, all sizes, hoodies too. With over 1,000 products to choose from, anything you need for merchandise or the best deals on everyday clothing, cheapesttshirts.ca is your go-to source. Buy today, ship tomorrow, cheapesttshirts.ca.
So what are the 5 keys to the Montreal Canadiens winning versus the Washington Capitals? Well, most important of all of them, without exception, is to stay out of bloody penalty box. Be disciplined. Don't take penalties, because if there's one thing we all know about the Washington Capitals, and with Alex Ovechkin, they are eternally dangerous on the power play. This year is no exception. If you play at 5-on-5, you have a better chance to win versus Washington. Keep your penalties at a minimum. Limit the amount of chances Alex Ovechkin gets from his office on the power play, and you stand a really good chance of winning the hockey game. And of course, with that goes winning the special teams battle. That means limit the amount of penalties and score on your opportunities. The Canadiens have not been very good on the power play of late. That needs to change. They're decent at 5-on-5. But if they get the power play moving again, as they were doing at the beginning of the year, then I think the Canadiens will have more success. I go back and take a look at a couple of shows ago where I talk about the power play, and I gave you guys my philosophy about the way the power play should be run and how the bumper is the most important part of the power play, no matter what passing scheme you have. That holds true. And with the fact that Zach Bolduc is going to get more looks on that power play, if he's in the bumper, he knows what to do, because that's where he played with the St. Louis Blues. So putting him in the bumper and allowing him to shoot from there is going to create new opportunities for the Montreal Canadiens, opportunities that they didn't see since they put Ivan Demidov on that first power play unit. So shut down the Washington power play and score on your opportunities. Very, very simple. Then there's, of course, the goaltending. Logan Thompson, he's slated to start, unconfirmed as yet, but confirmed for Montreal. Sam Montembeault. These two guys went at it last year in the playoffs, and until Monty hurt his groin, it was pretty much back and forth. Now, the thing about Monty is he's still nursing that groin injury. It's not as if he's 100% as yet, and that's why he's having trouble with his movements. But by and large, Sam Montembeault has to play better than Logan Thompson. It's not a question of can he. He must. If there's one thing the Canadiens haven't gotten since this losing streak or losing skid started, is the fact that they haven't been able to get quality net minding, allowing goal after goal after goal. Doesn't mean last game that Jakub Dobich wasn't good, but along with the first goal, he should have been able to stop that, even though Werenski was able to step in. So there's some give there. So let's see what Montembeault can do. He's had time to practice. He's had time to work. Let's see if he adopts any new philosophies in the way he tends goal. Always about the neutral zone. If the Canadiens can control the neutral zone and keep the Capitals from attacking with speed, they'll be okay. The issue, though, is the neutral zone between the dots. If you're going to play on the outside in the neutral zone, that falls right into the wheelhouse of guys like Anthony Beauvillier and Tom Wilson, who like to get physical. The Canadiens don't want to get physical when they're covering the neutral zone. If the guy wants to take the outside, let him take the outside. He's not dangerous from there. When he gets between the dots, that's when he's dangerous. So defend the middle of the ice, give them the outside, and in your defensive zone, keep them outside the dots, limit their chances, and you're going to be just fine. By the same token, Montreal's got to control that neutral ice area. The transition game, it's got to be theirs. If there's anything that I know about this Montreal Canadiens team and the skill that they have, they're quick. They're speedy. And they create offense off the rush. When it comes to actually possessing the puck in the offensive zone, that's where they lose themselves, because nobody wants to pull the trigger. But when they're in transition, more often than not, you see the guys shoot the puck more often. So let's try a little bit more transition offense as opposed to possession offense and see whether or not they generate more shots. They got 32 last game. Not because they kept the puck in the offensive zone, but because they came in with speed and ripped shots on goal and went to the net for rebounds. That's what we want to see from Montreal. Hopefully that's what we get. And finally, use the home crowd. Feed off them. Create momentum. It's one thing that Montreal really hasn't done extremely well this year, because more often than not, we've seen them lose leads in the third, lose momentum, and then go into overtime. The Canadiens need to start winning games in regulation. In order to do that, leverage the energy that the fans give you. Okay? You play, when you have the Montreal Canadiens jersey on, you play in front of the best fans in the world. Ask anybody out there. They love their fans, but when it comes to atmosphere, I don't think there's a single person that would doubt that the Montreal fan base is rabid and more excitable than any other fan base in the National Hockey League. It's why opposing teams love to come play here so much. That and the fact that there's a few more strip joints in Montreal than there are anywhere else. But I digress. So those are my 5 keys. Okay? Make sure you stay disciplined and stay out of the box. Win the special teams battle. Make sure you get better goaltending. Control the neutral zone. And, of course, last but not least, leverage the momentum that the fans bring to you. Do you think the Montreal Canadiens can beat the Washington Capitals? Put it in the comments. Personally, I think they can. One thing about the Capitals that the Canadiens have on them is the fact that the Capitals have an older lineup, right? Whereas the Canadiens are the youngest team in the National Hockey League. Younger team, more stamina, faster feet. Use your strengths. Play to your strengths. Don't allow the Capitals to dictate the pace. You dictate it, because after all, being the faster team, you'll be able to gain more momentum if you play fast and get the fans into the game early and often. Tomorrow night, we'll take a look after the game at what transpired between the Washington Capitals and the Montreal Canadiens. As always, we thank instacustoms.com and cheapesttshirts.ca for sponsoring the show. And until tomorrow night, go Habs go.